Hello and welcome back to my channel. I have a double page scrapbook layout for you today. As you can see, we're going to be creating with the Hey Handsome collection. Yes, I have lots of this paper. I bought 2 packs because, well, I love it. And as a boy mom, I've got lots of, boy photos, and this paper pack is just perfect for my boys. It's got this really nice masculine feel, lots of visual texture, and the color palette is awesome. Do you ever watch those like home improvement shows? Like I love Fixer Upper with Chip and Joanna Gaines. Sometimes she'll find one random piece like a decorative bowl, and that will inspire the whole aesthetic for the project, right? Or for at least one room. This sticker sheet kind of did that for me. I saw this pine tree and the compass, and it immediately had me thinking mountains. And then I love to bring in pocket cards to incorporate on my layouts. I cut them in. You can see that one I cut into a tag for another project. But these two, Wild and Free, and then Hey Good Lookin', that had me thinking, I cannot stop singing the song from Hank Williams, the 1950 song, Hey Good Lookin'. I am not going to sing for you because you guys would just click off. It's not great, but the pocket card is awesome. And so these two had me thinking Western. So I remembered I had these photos. This is my youngest son, Clayton, and he has this little project filly. This is Kate. She's not his. She belongs to his boss. He works at a pack station in the summer, but all winter long, he got to bring Kate home. So if you've been following my channel for a while, you know this is the filly that sent Clayton flying, broke his arm. I'll show you that layout towards the end here, so stay tuned for that. It was a fun one. But he prevailed. His arm healed up, and he was able to, have a nice summer in the mountains with her, and he brought her home for the winter to keep her going. So I thought, his jacket's a little bit more on the orangey red, and we definitely have the orange tones in here, but I think it's going to work. So you can see we've got the pine greens and then the charcoaly black like in his jacket. I think it's going to be awesome. And so here's just another shot of him swinging a rope, trying to get her used to that. He'll just go around and maybe rope like a tree branch or something and drag it, and all that is so good for young horses. His friend lives just down the way, a couple miles, who has a horse, so they like to ride together and just have fun, doing what boys do. So I'm going to use these pictures. Again, it is going to be a double page layout. So let me clear this up and we will jump right in. Let me grab my Versamats, and actually, I almost forgot to show you, I have the Mix-In collection. So the Mix-In paper pack are just this great collection of patterns that are designed to go along with the current collections in the catalog. So this one right here, I love wood grain. Absolutely love it. And in fact, I'll link a video below showing you how you can make your own wood grain paper. It was a little tip I learned from Tanya Roberts, so you're going to want to check that video out. But this one to me is very, very Western and will also go perfectly with these photos. There, layout done. All we need is a title, right? Just kidding. So anyway, I'm going to pull this one and this one, I think, from, this is like the charcoal color, and I think those will complement the collection very well. But look how pretty these papers are. Love that. Absolutely gorgeous with the scripty writing. That one's going to go with the Cosette collection beautifully. This one is one of my favorites, like a little newsprint. This one I already took a chunk out of for another project, and they are double-sided. And they're same color palette, but you get a different pattern. So those are fun. I always add the mix-ins in because they stretch your paper collections, or you can just use them on their own because they're just really great patterns. I'm going to lay down a sheet of white daisy paper for my base here. So I pulled these papers. This one's from Hey Handsome, and then these two are from the mix-ins. And I need to stretch this across 2 pages. So what I was kind of thinking here, I want to bring the green in because I want to play up the pine trees and add that mountain feel. So that I definitely want to use that. Plus there's lots of greens, in the photo. This is my favorite photo right here. So this one, I have a habit of doing that. I'll put my favorite photo on the left-hand side. I usually put my title on the left-hand side. Not always, but if it's a double page layout, that just tends to be something I do. So I'm going to mat it on this one. I think that makes it pop. It does have the white frame, but I love it against the dark charcoal background, and that subtle pattern is just really kind of nice. And having him in this orangey red plaid jacket actually is really kind of nice because that's going to draw your eye directly to the photo and really make that him the focus of the layout, which is what we want. So I'm just kind of planning here. I don't have a game plan for this. All of my photos are 5.5 by 4. So they end up not being a true 4x6 because the way they're formatted on my iPhone. So this one, I have one portrait style. So we could go like that. Look, he's like riding away off the layout. You guys, you know that bugs me. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to flip these because actually this is going to be good. Because now we're going to have some of that orangey red color on both sides of the layouts. That's actually going to be very helpful to the balance of the layout. I'm going to take a second to remove the branding strips. We call these zip strips, and close to my heart world on one side is the information of the paper pack. That's a cool pattern too. So many good choices. But you can use these as accents on your layouts. I love them. So I'm going to cut these off, and I'm thinking I'm going to cut this one pretty much at 6 inches. So we'll have half of it for each side. Okay, so this one is 6 by 12, but what I like to do is make nooks and crannies, and that way I have places for titles, I've got spots to tuck embellishments, and I want this green paper to show. So I'm thinking if I just cut this down, I could either do these right on top of each other, or I could even bump this over right here and then have this spot for like journaling or some embellishments and whatnot. So, and then I'm going to cut this one. Sometimes it's fun to be a little asymmetrical. So on one side, I'm going to do 5 inches, and then I'll have 7 inches for the opposite side. So this way, in the mix-in collection, you only get one of each pattern paper. So I'm trying to make it that I can use this wood grain on the opposite side as well. So now I can cut that off back there and have a full, 5 by 12 inch piece to layer onto the other side. And we can even, if you wanted to, you could make a white frame. Let me see what that looks like real quick. I just like lots of layers, and when you do something like this, it really highlights those layers. I think I might go with that. I might have that 1/2 inch frame going around the side there. I like that. So the other side of this one is really cool too. That is a great pattern. I could use a whole paper pack of this. That would be awesome. You could take a toffee sheet of paper too and kind of take like a white pigment ink pad and drag it across that too. I think that would look and give you some really cool looks. So we're just going to bring back in our pieces here. That's the opposite side of that one. Harbor is one of my favorite colors. I love it. Very cool. So we're going to go like that, and then I'm not 100% sure on this one yet, so I'm going to wait to cut that one down. Oops, wrong side. And then I'm going to ink up all the edges too. That's going to add a lot of separation to my layers. But yeah, I think that looks good. I'm not cutting this yet because I don't quite know, and I still may do this. We'll see. But you'll notice this creates the exact opposite piece that we would need to repeat that on the opposite side here, if we choose to do so. They don't have to be matchy-matchy, but when you do a mirror layout on a double page, it generally looks very well balanced and carries all those elements over. And it's not exactly because we have a bigger piece of the wood grain over here, smaller one here, and then a larger section of the green pattern over here. So it's, like I said, it's slightly, if you think of it as one 12 by 24 layout, it's all one cohesive piece, but it is slightly asymmetrical with the measurements. So I'm going to cut this one down and bring that right back in here. And then, again, we have that 1/2 inch border of the white showing. And then having the white base too lets us cut our papers up because then we have something to anchor it to. I have grabbed my black ink pad. I have a Ranger ink blending tool. These have the little interchangeable foam sponge dauber on the end there, so you could use a different foam disc for different colors, which is always really handy. I keep one with the black ready to go because it's my most used, but I'm just adding a little bit of dimension and separation to these layers.
These pictures make me so happy. I grew up riding horses and so did my husband, so it's fun to see that Clayton took to that naturally. He came by it on both sides, so it was kind of hard to avoid, but my oldest son isn't a big fan, so you never know.
I'm still not 100% certain on photo placement, but I'm just going to set these down and we'll start bringing in the embellishments and let it develop from there. And you guys know I love to cut my pocket cards into shape. Sometimes I'll fussy cut them out. Sometimes I'll use some of my, fancy brackets or tags. I do this a lot here on my channel. Now these are the tags and tags, which are still available, but they're not quite big enough to capture the whole design. So I grabbed my Buildable tag set, and unfortunately this one's no longer available. But I'm telling you, if you come across a good tag set, get it, because they are so usable in your craft room, and I use tags on probably 90% of my projects. I just love them. So we're going to lose a little bit of the bottom of the pocket card, but that's okay. We're going to capture enough of the design. So I'm going to cut that one out and then use this seam tag here. Now I got to be careful because I could go either way. Now if I wanted to tuck this over here, I would need to cut my tag top on that end. And then if I'm going to go over here, I'm going to want my tag top on the other side of the pocket card. So I need to decide that ahead of time. So I'm going to cut this one first because there's only one direction to go.
I ran that through my die cutting machine and it's looking perfect. So I just need to decide here. We got to make up our minds. So I'm just going to kind of play around with these. I could put this one here, but I like it better over here with just the pictures of my son for this particular one. And so I'm going to go ahead and cut it with the tag top on the right-hand side. They do have a different orientation, so I could have cut them both portrait style, but I wanted the lighter color with the orange writing, so I opted for this side. I'm just going to add a little ink to the edge here. This is why I always keep a black one handy because, I'm constantly just grabbing it and doing little bits and pieces like this. I think these are going to be kind of nestled like that. Now I have this zip strip. Stars to me are so Western, and they don't have to be Western, but they definitely lend themselves well to kind of a Western flair. So I thought it'd be fun to use that to anchor my little embellishment cluster down here. I'm going to cut this on an angle, and I'm just ending it so we have one solid star. Now that's going to create kind of a horizontal line, just add a little visual weight to the base of the layout here. This die set does come with little hole reinforcers, so I cut a couple from charcoal cardstock, and I'm just going to apply a bead of glue. And then this is a wax pencil. When it loses its stickiness, you just sharpen it and it's like brand new again. They're so handy for picking up these tiny little bits and pieces. They actually come 2 to a pack, and I do have them linked in the description box below. This is only half of one pencil. I cut them up just so I had more readily available to grab. You'll notice I was inking up the edges of the other cardstock. For this pattern paper, I'm going to rough it up with my edge distresser. You'll notice it's got a white core, so that helps it stand out. Plus, I really like the texture. If you don't have an edge distresser, you can get the same look with the outside edge of your scissors. I went ahead and got the rest of that done off camera, and now I can go ahead and bring my photos back into place here. I want to bring a little of this pattern into the right-hand side of the layout. So I'm going to cut large photo mats for each of the photos, and that way we'll have that same color over on the right side. And I did go ahead and distress the edges of these pieces as well. So I can go ahead and get these taped down with my Tombow tape runner here. I think I'm going to actually overlap those a little bit, and then we can kind of tuck this in the corner. I want to repeat that little zip strip, so we only need a tiny little piece. So I'm actually going to cut it off, again, paying attention to, actually I don't need that much, we'll cut it here. I didn't want to cut through the center of the star, and that way I can have that nice finished edge. Now these are the pieces that, inspired this whole layout. So I want to make sure to get these in here. And oops, my compass, we need north facing up. It needs something else. This pattern paper, one of the sheets I kind of dedicated to fussy cutting because there's all these great little doodads in here. I cut these two because they have a nice outdoor kind of cowboy feel to them. I also have this sticker that says the original. So I'm going to just try it. If you don't know until you try it. So just experiment, kind of set it up. And that one works okay. Let's try this one. I actually like that one better. I think that looks good. I like it, so I'm going to go ahead and commit. I did get all those pieces adhered down with my tape runner, but I'm going to add a little dimension by popping up the compass on a foam dot here. I do want to add a little background stamping to this layout. We have a lot of, cool texture going on in that pattern paper, but I want to add a little bit more color. This is the background element stamp. So I've grabbed that long linear stamp. I'm going to flip my Versamat over so we have that foam cushion on the back, which will help us get a better stamped impression. I am going to use pine ink, so we'll get this nice and inky here. I'm actually going to rotate this to make it a little easy for me, but I do need those to be in their actual location so I know where to put the stamp. So just get everything lined up. What I like to do is ink it up and then hold it above the area you want to stamp. Then you can just slide your photos or your pattern paper out of the way, press down, give it a second to soak in, and then you can put your photos back into place. Stamping is such a cool way to add layers and depth to your layout. Now I also want to add some pine trees. This is the change of scenery stamp. This was a special from last month. I'm going to use the same pine ink and then add it to the left of the tag. Now I bumped that orange star zip strip and I need that to be at the right height because my pine trees are going to sit on that zip strip. So I just wanted to make sure the two sides were lined up. We're going to do the same thing. Hold it over the area we want to stamp, move the zip strip, and then press down. If you have already adhered your layers, you can always use a very thin piece of printer paper to mask off where you don't want stamped, but it is much easier to stamp on a flat surface. This stamp set is called Family Roots. I already had this arrow stamped out that is inked up in charcoal, and I thought it will go very nicely with this. So this is kind of a fun arrow because you could use that spot on the left to stamp like a word sentiment in, which I might. I'm going to have to look through my collection, but I thought that would be kind of a good anchor for that tag. And then I have these bits and pieces. Now we need something up here to create that visual triangle. So I thought I'd just put a tiny little cluster up in this area here. There is a plaid pocket card, and I really wanted to incorporate that because it reminds me of my son's plaid Pendleton jacket. So I did cut it with the same tag shape, and I thought it would be fun just to layer that right under the Wild and Free tag, just for an added little, I could use the orange side, but I wanted it toned down just a little bit, so I went for the green plaid. I also have these Hey Handsome acrylic shapes. There's a bunch of stars in here, and then of course this little arrow. That's my last arrow. I've been really having fun adding those to my projects. But I wanted to add a little bit of black around to the different clusters, and again repeat those star embellishments because we have the stars introduced in the zip strip. So I thought it'd be fun to repeat those. Maybe one down here, maybe not. Let's add a little bit more stamping. I've got my toffee ink and then my favorite splatter stamp from the background elements. And this is tone on tone. So that background is basically toffee. The wood tone is toffee mixed in with white. So I want it to be subtle so it doesn't like overwhelm the embellishment cluster. It's just kind of adding a little bit to it. So I put a couple behind that tag and I want to repeat that over here on the right hand side. So we will move those out of the way. And I know it's probably not showing up very well for you on camera, but you can definitely see it in person. And I think it adds just a nice little something to that background. I can go ahead and get these adhered down because I don't think I'm going to add any more stamping. So we can go ahead and get these tucked into their spot here and bring those acrylic shapes back in. And you know what? I lied. I'm gonna add some arrows or X's. So this is from the same background element stamp. I masked off one of the X's because I didn't quite want it that long. and then just putting a row right up top there, and then one right over here on the opposite diagonal corner. Now, this stamp is super old. It's called Yeehaw, and I almost forgot it, but I really wanted to add this because he's swinging a rope, riding a horse, and I thought, that's perfect. I could put it there, but I want to add my journaling to this section. I've got a couple different options. This orange pocket card is from the Hey Handsome collection, and I do really like that. It says Words of Wisdom on the bottom corner, but I also have a bunch of these in my stash, and I thought, well, maybe we could just kind of put this here. Is it too much? You know what? I like it. I'm going to go for it. I have my black LePen journaling pen. I love this thing. It's so nice and juicy, and I could write pretty tiny with it. I am just documenting, my son and what horse he's riding, and of course his friend Emmett and his horse, where they were. It was really cold this day. It was kind of back and forth between rain and snow, but it totally did not stop them. They were out like all day riding around. Hang tight and I'll show you that layout I created of my son and his broken arm. But I love how this turned out. I think the stamping really adds a lot to the background there, and the distressed edges there turned out really kind of fun, just a little extra something something. And I'm glad I remembered that Yeehaw stamp because it's just too perfect, right? The very first time my son rode this filly, it was her first ride ever. She bucked him off. This is where we ended up, in the hospital with a broken arm. And hey, look, I used the background element stamp to add a little splatter for this layout too. So you can find the link to this one in the description box below, along with everything I used to create the Hey Handsome layout. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. I would appreciate it. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're looking for more boy scrapbook layout inspiration, check out this playlist right here. Head on over to my social media links for still shots of this layout along with all of the others.